culture, demography, and natural resources.
我们要踔厉奋发，勇毅前行，努力创造更加灿烂的明天。
3、2、1，点火！
亲爱的观众们，外面的海底，
首次火星探测任务，天问1号探测器。
Chinese rejuvenation through a Chinese path to modernization. Chinese modernization is socialist modernization pursued under the leadership of the CPC.
中国式现代化是中国共产党和中国人民长期实践探索的成果，是一项伟大而艰巨的事业。
我希望通过东家七仙女的短视频宣传，让我们东乡的特产更多的卖出去。
Absolute poverty has been eradicated in China. The final 98.99 million rural residents living under the current poverty line have now all been lifted out of poverty. Chinese modernization is the modernization of a huge population of common prosperity for all.
绿水青山就是金山银山。
Chinese modernization is the modernization of material and cultural ethical advancement, of harmony between humanity and nature. Chinese modernization is the modernization of peaceful development. China has made its choice based on its unique history, culture, demography, and natural resources.
我们要踔厉奋发，勇毅前行，努力创造更加灿烂的明天。
3、2、1，点火！
亲爱的观众们，外面的海底，
首次火星探测任务，天问1号探测器。
Chinese rejuvenation through a Chinese path to modernization. Chinese modernization is socialist modernization pursued under the leadership of the CPC.
中国式现代化是中国共产党和中国人民长期实践探索的成果，是一项伟大而艰巨的事业。
我希望通过东家七仙女的短视频宣传，让我们东乡的特产更多的卖出去。
Absolute poverty has been eradicated in China. The final 98.99 million rural residents living under the current poverty line have now all been lifted out of poverty. Chinese modernization is the modernization of a huge population of common prosperity for all.
绿水青山就是金山银山。
Chinese modernization is the modernization of material and cultural ethical advancement, of harmony between humanity and nature. Chinese modernization is the modernization of peaceful development. China has made its choice based on its unique history, culture, demography, and natural resources.
我们要踔厉奋发，勇毅前行，努力创造更加灿烂的明天。
3、2、1，点火！
亲爱的观众们，外面的海底，
首次火星探测任务，天问1号探测器。
Chinese rejuvenation through a Chinese path to modernization. Chinese modernization is socialist modernization pursued under the leadership of the CPC.
中国式现代化是中国共产党和中国人民长期实践探索的成果，是一项伟大而艰巨的事业。
我希望通过东家七仙女的短视频宣传，让我们东乡的特产更多的卖出去。
Absolute poverty has been eradicated in China. The final 98.99 million rural residents living under the current poverty line have now all been lifted out of poverty. Chinese modernization is the modernization of a huge population of common prosperity for all.
绿水青山就是金山银山。
Chinese modernization is the modernization of material and cultural ethical advancement, of harmony between humanity and nature. Chinese modernization is the modernization of peaceful development. China has made its choice based on its unique history, culture, demography, and natural resources.
我们要踔厉奋发，勇毅前行，努力创造更加灿烂的明天。
3、2、1，点火！
亲爱的观众们，外米的海底，
首次火星探测任务，天问1号探测器。
Chinese rejuvenation through a Chinese path to modernization. Chinese modernization is socialist modernization pursued under the leadership of the CPC.
中国式现代化是中国共产党和中国人民长期实践探索的成果，是一项伟大而艰巨的事业。
我希望通过东家七仙女的短视频宣传，让我们东乡的特产更多的卖出去。
Absolute poverty has been eradicated in China. The final 98.99 million rural residents living under the current poverty line have now all been lifted out of poverty. Chinese modernization is the modernization of a huge population of common prosperity for all.
绿水青山就是金山银山。
Chinese modernization is the modernization of material and cultural ethical advancement, of harmony between humanity and nature. Chinese modernization is the modernization of peaceful development. China has made its choice based on its unique history, culture, demography, and natural resources.
我们要踔厉奋发，勇毅前行，努力创造更加灿烂的明天。
3、2、1，点火！
亲爱的观众们，外米的海底，
首次火星探测任务，天问1号探测器。
Chinese rejuvenation through a Chinese path to modernization. Chinese modernization is socialist modernization pursued under the leadership of the CPC.
中国式现代化，是中国共产党和中国人民长期实践探索的成果，是一项伟大而艰巨的事业。
我希望通过东家七仙女的短视频宣传，让我们东乡的特产更多的卖出去。
Absolute poverty has been eradicated in China. The final 98.99 million rural residents living under the current poverty line have now all been lifted out of poverty. Chinese modernization is the modernization of a huge population of common prosperity for all.
绿水青山就是金山银山。
Chinese modernization is the modernization of material and cultural ethical advancement, of harmony between humanity and nature. Chinese modernization is the modernization of peaceful development. China has made its choice based on its unique history, culture, demography, and natural resources.
我们要踔厉奋发，勇毅前行，努力创造更加灿烂的明天。
3、2、1，点火！
亲爱的观众们，外米的海底，
首次火星探测任务，天问1号探测器。
Chinese rejuvenation through a Chinese path to modernization. Chinese modernization is socialist modernization pursued under the leadership of the CPC.
中国式现代化是中国共产党和中国人民 长期实践探索的成果，是一项伟大而艰巨的事业。
我希望通过东家七仙女的短视频宣传，让我们东乡的特产更多的卖出去。
Absolute poverty has been eradicated in China. The final 98.99 million rural residents living under the current poverty line have now all been lifted out of poverty. Chinese modernization is the modernization of a huge population of common prosperity for all.
绿水青山就是金山银山。
Chinese modernization is the modernization of material and cultural ethical advancement, of harmony between humanity and nature. Chinese modernization is the modernization of peaceful development. China has made its choice based on its unique history, culture, demography, and natural resources.
我们要踔厉奋发，勇毅前行，努力创造更加灿烂的明天。
3、2、1，点火！
亲爱的观众们，外米的海底，
首次火星探测任务，天问1号探测器。
Chinese rejuvenation through a Chinese path to modernization. Chinese modernization is socialist modernization pursued under the leadership of the CPC.
中国式现代化是中国共产党和中国人民长期实践探索的成果，是一项伟大而艰巨的事业。
我希望通过东家七仙女的短视频宣传，让我们东乡的特产更多的卖出去。
Absolute poverty has been eradicated in China. The final 98.99 million rural residents living under the current poverty line have now all been lifted out of poverty. Chinese modernization is the modernization of a huge population of common prosperity for all.
绿水青山就是金山银山。
Chinese modernization is the modernization of material and cultural ethical advancement, of harmony between humanity and nature.
3、2、1，点火！
亲爱的观众们，外米的海底，
首次火星探测任务，天问1号探测器。
Chinese rejuvenation through a Chinese path to modernization. Chinese modernization is socialist modernization pursued under the leadership of the CPC.
中国式现代化是中国共产党和中国人民长期实践探索的成果，是一项伟大而艰巨的事业。
我希望通过东家七仙女的短视频宣传，让我们东乡的特产更多的卖出去。
Absolute poverty has been eradicated in China. The final 98.99 million rural residents living under the current poverty line have now all been lifted out of poverty. Chinese modernization is the modernization of a huge population of common prosperity for all.
绿水青山就是金山银山。
Chinese modernization is the modernization of material and cultural ethical advancement, of harmony between humanity and nature. Chinese modernization is the modernization of peaceful development. China has made its choice based on its unique history, culture, demography, and natural resources.
我们要踔厉奋发，勇毅前行，努力创造更加灿烂的明天。
Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Vision China. I'm Pan Yixuan from China Daily. The 20th National Congress of the Communist Party of China has been successfully held in Beijing from October 16 to 22, 2022. Today's edition of Vision China will help you better understand the spirit of the 20th National Congress of the Communist Party of China and the Chinese-style modernization. The theme for today is Path to Progress, Chinese Modernization. First, let's introduce the honorable guests who join us today. They are Auntie Kid, former Minister of Transport of Malaysia and Chairman of the country's Center for New Inclusive Asia. Ella Rule, Chair of the Communist Party of Great Britain, Marxist-Leninist. Hu Yinglian, Professor at the National Academy of Governance. Saurabh Gupta, Senior Fellow at the Institute for China-America Studies. Ian Goodrum, China Daily reporter. But first, to deliver opening remarks, please welcome Liu Jianchao, Minister of International Department of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by thanking the China Daily for the invitation. It is indeed a great pleasure for me to join you at this cloud event shortly after the 20th National Congress of the Communist Party of China. The topic for our discussion today, Path to Progress, Chinese Modernization, does carry considerable significance. Development has been the timeless theme for human society, and modernization represents an important hallmark of the development and progress of human civilization. In his report to the 20th National Party Congress, General Secretary Xi Jinping made reference to the term modernization in more than 80 instances and gave a systematic exposition of the unique features and essential requirements of China's modernization. With strategic plans and major principles clearly defined for building China into a great modern socialist country in all respects, this constitutes a new contribution to the unremitting efforts of humanity to explore paths towards modernization. China's modernization goes beyond copying others. It is an independent path to development. For modernization, there does not exist a single definitive model. Copying mechanically is not the solution. China's modernization is socialist modernization pursued under the leadership of the Communist Party of China. It contains elements that are common to the modernization processes of all countries, but it is more characterized by features that are unique to the Chinese context. It has broken down the stereotyped thinking of equating modernization with westernization, proving irrefutably that developing countries are capable of independently treading the path to modernization that works. On the new journey, the Communist Party of China will work unswervingly to advance China's modernization. We will, under no circumstances, engage in the export of models or in asking other countries to copy China's practice. Based on the principles of independence, complete equality, mutual respect, and non-interference in each other's internal affairs, the Communist Party of China stands ready to strengthen exchanges and cooperation with political parties and organizations of other countries. In turn, all countries and nations will be able to develop first and foremost with their own strength and to maintain a firm grasp on the futures of their own development and progress. All countries can excel in finding the path to modernization compatible with their own national conditions. China's modernization goes beyond the notion of supremacy of capital. It is a people-first path to development. Putting people first has been an invaluable experience of the Chinese Communist Party over the course of a century of endeavor. China's modernization is aimed at seeking happiness for all the Chinese people. By staying committed to taking its root in the people, ensuring the principal status of the people, and drawing strength from the people, it has risen above the old rut towards modernization that is capital-centered, polarizing, and inflated with materialism. By staying committed to the philosophy of sustainable development, it has discarded the grow now, clean up later approach and put paid to the alienated model of killing the goose that lays the golden eggs and draining the pond to get the fish. The commitment of China's modernization thus lies in building a beautiful homeland for man and nature to live in harmony. On the new journey, the Chinese Communist Party of China will continue to strive for the people's aspiration for a better life, with special emphasis on promoting common prosperity for the entire Chinese people. Meanwhile, our focus will be placed on the well-being of not only the present generation, but also generations to come. By doing so, it will be ensured that modernization better serves the fundamental interests of the overwhelming majority of the people. China's modernization goes beyond the notion of putting one's own country first. It is a path to development that pursues common prosperity for all. The modernization we pursue does not seek outward expansion, nor attempt to confine other countries to the lower end of industrial chains. Instead, our modernization is underpinned by openness, inclusiveness, and win-win cooperation geared towards creating more opportunities with our own development for the whole world. We firmly oppose hegemonism and power politics in any form, as well as the imposition of fences and barriers, decoupling and disruption of industrial and supply chains. China is willing to augment the input of resources in global development cooperation so as to narrow the north-south gap and support and help other developing countries grow even faster. The Communist Party of China will continue to strengthen the communication of ideas and policy dovetailing with political parties worldwide and work actively to promote solid progress in Belt and Road cooperation and extensive implementation of the Global Development Initiative and the Global Security Initiative. What we do together will ensure that successful modernization will deliver even greater and better benefits to people of all countries around the world. China's modernization goes beyond the notion of cultural superiority. It is a path to development that promotes the progress of humanity. Despite differences in the color of skin and language, human beings are by no means superior or inferior to one another in their civilizations. All civilizations contain common values that transcend time and space. By integrating the scientific truth of Marxism with the great civilization of the Chinese nation and incorporating the fine achievements of world civilizations, China's modernization represents the organic combination of traditional culture and modern civilization and that of national civilization and world civilization. A new type of integrated development of civilizations has thus come into being. On the new journey, our party is willing to join hands with political parties worldwide to promote humanity's shared values of peace, development, fairness, justice, democracy, and freedom. Let us draw on each other's strength and transcend the so-called civilizational hierarchy as we work together to advance modernization with our respective futures and develop a new form of human advancement. With our efforts, a new dynamic of exchange and mutual learning among different civilizations under the same time and space circumstances shall emerge, and we shall pool more wisdom and strengthen for the building of a human community with a shared future. Ladies and gentlemen, at present, momentous changes unseen in a century are accelerating across the world. The future of modernization is bright, but we still have a long way to go. In China, we have an old saying which reads, "The going can be tough when one works alone, but things will be easier when people work together." In the same vein, there is an English proverb which goes, "United we stand, divided we fall." Let us unite and work together to explore the path to modernization compatible with our respective national conditions, to open new horizon for humanity's path to modernization. What we do together will enable the giant ship of world development to break out of the shadow of high winds and choppy waters and sail towards our common future of gentle breeze and bright sunshine.
Thank you. Now please welcome Qu Yingpu, publisher and editor-in-chief of China Daily, to deliver an opening speech.
Dear Minister Liu and distinguished guests, welcome to Vision China. On behalf of China Daily, I would like to express my heartfelt appreciation to Minister Liu and all the distinguished guests. On October 22nd, the 20th National Congress of the Communist Party of China successfully concluded amid widespread attention worldwide and great expectations from all walks of life. It was held at a crucial time as the entire party and Chinese people embark on a new journey to build China into a modern socialist country in all respects and advance toward the second centennial goal. To help the international community better understand the essence of the Congress, China Daily is hosting this Vision China session with the theme Path to Progress, Chinese Modernization, inviting experts and scholars from home and abroad to discuss the great significance of the Chinese path to modernization for China and the world. At the Congress, General Secretary Xi Jinping explained in depth the 5 features of the Chinese path to modernization. The modernization intended for a huge population, common prosperity for all, material and cultural ethical advancement, harmony between humanity and nature, and peaceful development. The Chinese path to modernization has grabbed global attention. It is viewed as an important concept for decoding the Chinese path and envisioning China's future. Today, our speakers will share their insights into the Chinese path to modernization with our audience. Here, I will share my views on the Chinese path to modernization, its target, its approach, and its implications for the world. First, meet the expectations of the people. The Chinese path to modernization upholds the people-centered philosophy of development. The Chinese path to modernization is essentially the modernization of the people, and its goal is to benefit the people. People stands out as a keyword throughout General Secretary Xi's report to the Congress, such as put the people first. Some foreign media organizations have commented that every ambition and goal of the CPC is all about the people. When meeting the press after the conclusion of the Congress, General Secretary Xi once again underscored that we shall always act for the people and rely on them in everything we do. During his visit to Italy in 2019, Xi was asked how he felt when elected Chinese president. He said, "Selfless shall I be for the good of the people." This is also a sincere response to the CPC members' original aspirations and a concise description of their great practices, winning the fight against poverty as scheduled, holistically managing both the epidemic response and economic and social development, meeting the people's ever-growing needs for a better life. All these efforts honor the tenets of the party and the government, that is, serving the people. Second, pursue the dream. The Chinese path to modernization is a natural choice for marching toward rejuvenation. It is the common pursuit of various countries to achieve modernization. Countries have different cultural and national conditions, and their development paths vary from one another. China is working to achieve modernization for more than 1.4 billion people, a number larger than the combined population of all developed countries today. This is a task of unparalleled difficulty and complexity. It inevitably means that our pathways for development and methods of advancement will be unique. The CPC writes new chapters in adapting Marxism to the Chinese context and the needs of our times, and charts the Chinese path to modernization. Through arduous explorations and practices, the Chinese people have realized that only socialism can save and develop China, and only by taking the Chinese path to modernization can the Chinese nation achieve its great rejuvenation. Third, have a global vision. The Chinese path to modernization offers more Chinese wisdom, Chinese solutions, and Chinese strength to the world. As an old Chinese saying goes, common good for all is pursued when the great way prevails. The CPC pursues happiness for the Chinese people as well as rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. It is also a party that pursues progress for humanity and common good for the world. The CPC works to absorb and draw from the essence of other human civilizations, and it embarks on exchanges and mutual learning of experiences in development with other countries. It is blazing a great trail and providing a new choice for mankind to realize modernization. On the Chinese path to modernization, China will further pursue development by staunchly championing world peace and growth, and will not tread the old path of war, colonization, and plunder taken by some countries. We know well that the brutal and blood-stained path of enrichment at the expense of others caused great suffering for the people of developing countries. China will stand firmly on the right side of history and on the side of humanity's progress. It will dedicate itself to peace, development, cooperation, and mutual benefit. With an open mind, China will draw inspiration from all human civilizations' outstanding achievements and work to build an even better world. To conclude, I would like to thank all the distinguished guests and speakers for their participation. Let us contribute wisdom and strength to promoting exchanges between China and the world, pushing for success of more countries in taking their path to modernization, building a community with a shared future for mankind, and advancing world peace and development. I thank you.
Thank you. And now for our first speaker, Ong T. Kit, former Minister of Transport of Malaysia and Chairman of the country's Center for New Inclusive Asia. We have a short video about him.
Hi, everyone. The new CPC lineup under the stewardship of General Secretary President Xi Jinping has just been mandated to navigate China through its trajectory of governance for the next 5 years and beyond, more so in endeavoring to attain the second centenary goal of building China into a modern socialist state by the year 2049. The spotlight on the just concluded 20th Communist Party of China National Congress in Beijing had been shining possibly far brighter than that homing in on any other ruling party convention in the world. It is an impactful milestone that is all set to reshape the world, signifying the magnitude of China's influence on the world stage. In the past 10 years, China's international role has been visibly growing through its active participation in different global organizations and its deployment of peacekeeping troops serving under the authority of the United Nations Security Council. It has evolved from a mere passive follower of the existing world order to a staunch defender of multilateral international cooperation based on the UN Charter. On the partnership diplomacy front, the establishment of the China-ASEAN Comprehensive Strategic Partnership in the year 2021 was a well-deserved outcome vis-a-vis its Southeast Asian neighbors in ASEAN. This is believed to deepen and broaden further under the new leadership of CPC. ASEAN would continue to benefit from the inclusive and symbiotic Belt and Road Initiative through connectivity-based collaboration, as it has presented to the region and the world a stable, resilient, and egalitarian model of international cooperation. China, the first dialogue partner of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, has been the biggest trading partner of the bloc for the past 13 years, while ASEAN surpassed the European Union as the largest trading partner of China amid the raging COVID-19 pandemic in the year 2020. New drivers for economic cooperation are earmarked to be brought to the table to help boost the post-pandemic economic recovery in the region. Vaccine research and production, alongside the digital economy, green economy, and blue economy, to name just a few, are all set to boost the collaboration between China and ASEAN. The maritime-based blue economy is a case in point. At the ASEAN summit last year, the ASEAN leaders' declaration on the blue economy was adopted, signifying the bloc's determination to promote the sustainable development of the blue economy, thus opening another window of opportunity for cooperation with China. In retrospect, it was the inception of the Belt and Road Initiative in 2013 that triggered the anxiety among Western countries over the growing sphere of Chinese influence. By the same token, the Global Development Initiative that President Xi Jinping debuted in his speech at the plenary session of the United Nations General Assembly last year might have made the Western countries even more unsettled, as it is essentially more encompassing than the connectivity-driven BRI, or Belt and Road Initiative. The new initiative President Xi proposed is a vivid embodiment of the Chinese vision of building a community with a shared future for mankind to realize common development through international cooperation. The consistency of the Global Development Initiative with the United Nations 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development has resonated well among the international community, notably among the developing countries. In the context of ASEAN, the complementarity of the Global Development Initiative with the ASEAN Community Vision 2025 in the fields of regional political security, economic development, and social culture looks set to serve as a coveted instrument in endearing the world's second largest economy to the regional bloc. Indeed, the Global Development Initiative offers the latter, a timely solution to help realize the long-hatched ideals of establishing an ASEAN political security community, ASEAN economic community, and ASEAN social cultural community. For China, it makes an ideal multi-dimensional platform for deepening and broadening collaboration with ASEAN beyond economic cooperation. Amid the prevailing tide of deglobalization and geopolitical rivalry, this development model, consistent with the concept of prosper Thai neighbor, is a refreshing model. It can serve as a viable means for confidence building, managing disputes, and addressing the trust deficit, all of which constitute the key building blocks for peace amid the current rising tensions and uncertainties. From this perspective, China-ASEAN relations are of no exception. Their essence lies not in the nomenclature of a comprehensive strategic partnership per se, but more in the ensuing efforts to strengthen mutual trust through multidimensional capacity development and confidence building between ASEAN and China. The establishment of the China-ASEAN Comprehensive Strategic Partnership signifies the high level of maturity in their relationship. This should be reflected in the breadth and depth of their cooperation and the institutional mechanisms for exchange on multiple levels and in multiple sectors. In this context, the Global Development Initiative is a practical solution that serves the contemporary needs of ASEAN. By and large, Chinese diplomatic endeavors are not explicitly security-driven. Yet, in reality, the robust expansion of functional economic cooperation helps build trust and confidence between the trade partners. In this respect, the multidimensional model of the Global Development Initiative is no doubt a good enabler in helping China to build trust with ASEAN, thus paving the way for establishing a regional community with a shared future, where the security architecture is inseparable from the regional agenda. ASEAN should not allow itself to be unduly distracted by the West's risk portrayal narrative about it being drawn into the orbit of Chinese partnership diplomacy. It should by now be more matured and confident enough to know that its handling of relations with both the rival powers, namely China and the United States, need not be a binary choice. After all, it is the long-term interests of its 650 million people that matter in the final analysis. On this note, I thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Antikit, for expanding your views on the Global Development Initiative from the perspective of China-ASEAN relations. It is very inspiring. Please welcome our next speaker, Ella Rule, Chair of the Communist Party of Great Britain, Marxist-Leninist. Let's watch a short video about her.
Hello, my name is Ella Rule and I am the chair of the Communist Party of Great Britain Marxist-Leninist. Today, I'm very honoured to have been asked to comment on Comrade Xi Jinping's report to the 20th Party Congress of the Communist Party of China. Everything he had to say was in line with our policy. Especially welcome are his words that the Communist Party of China is dedicated to human progress and world harmony. We should expand our global vision and develop keen insight into the trends of human development and progress, respond to the general conditions of people of all countries, and play our part in resolving the common issues facing humankind. Now, these are the words of true friends. He made it clear that, quote, confronted with drastic changes in the international landscape, especially external attempts to blackmail, contain, blockade and exert maximum pressure on China, we have to put our national interests first, focused on internal political concerns and maintain firm strategic resolve. We have shown a fighting spirit and a firm determination to never yield to coercive power. We entirely agree that giving in to bullies only encourages them. The substantial strengthening of China's military, to which Comrade Xi Jinping refers in his report, is not a sign of aggressive intention on China's part, but on the contrary, its function is to maintain peace if at all possible. Everyone needs to ponder carefully Xi Jinping's words. In pursuing modernization, China will not tread the old path of war, colonization and plunder taken by some countries. We will stand on the right side of history and of human progress, dedicated to peace, development, cooperation and mutual benefit. In our party, we have also been impressed by the steps that have been taken by the Chinese Communist Party to strengthen the leadership of the party, as we entirely agree that it takes a good blacksmith to forge good steel. The leadership isn't to be forced on the people, but it's to be welcomed by them, because it's clear to them that all party members are devoted servants of the people, servants who serve by making themselves fit to lead through hard study of Marxism-Leninism, the ideology of the proletariat, hard work, incorruptibility and dedication. We welcome in particular the appointment of the new party leadership team, all members of which are known for just these qualities, having demonstrated them in abundance throughout their lives. The Communist Party of China has taken up cudgels in an exemplary way against any sign of pointless formalities, bureaucratism, hedonism and extravagance, thereby enhancing the prestige of the party among the people whom it serves. We are also heartened by Comrade Xi Jinping's words. We have waged a battle against corruption on a scale unprecedented in history. Driven by a strong sense of mission, we have resolved to offend a few thousand rather than fail 1.4 billion, and to clear our party of its ills. We've taken coordinated steps to see that officials do not have the audacity, opportunity, or desire to be corrupt. We're also full of admiration for the party's achievement of moderate prosperity for all and the lifting of 100 million poor rural residents out of poverty, for its success in combating the COVID pandemic, its unprecedented infrastructure projects such as railways, roads and water conservancy. And we can't help thinking how this contrasts with the situation in even rich imperialist countries, where the masses of the people are becoming steadily poorer. And the death rate from COVID was infinitely higher than in China, and where infrastructure tends to be neglected in the interests of a tiny minority of billionaires who appropriate for themselves the bulk of the profits generated by the workers, expending as little as possible on wages, social services infrastructure, etc. And it's only because of the firm hand of Communist Party leadership that China is able to ensure that the interests of the masses are not neglected, or those of future generations of people who are threatened by global warming brought about by the blind pursuit of profit. China's ecological achievements are admired by everyone because they are truly remarkable. There's so much more that can be said about Comrade Xi Jinping's report, but in the time available to me, I can't be as comprehensive as I would like. So I'd just like to finish by applauding the emphasis Comrade Xi Jinping puts in his report on Marxism as, quotes, the fundamental guiding ideology upon which our party and country are founded and thrive, unquote. We deeply relate to these words. We entirely relate to the principle that only by integrating the tenets of Marxism with specific realities can we provide correct answers to the major questions presented by the times, which is what our party always endeavours to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ruo, for discussing the significance of the 20th National Congress of the CPC in conjunction with the development of the communism in the UK and China. Our next speaker is Hu Yinglian, professor at the National Academy of Governance, and here is a short video about him.
Hey guys, my name is Hu Yinglian. My English name is William. I am a professor from the Chinese Academy of Governance, where I conduct research on social policy and social governance. It's my great honor to be here to share my understandings of Chinese modernization. Modernization literally means a transition from a traditional society to a modern one. In today's world, modernization comprises industrialization, urbanization, and globalization. China is a huge country with 1.4 billion population. That's more than the population of all developed countries combined. So it is never an easy job to get modern in China. Perhaps that's why when then China's top leader, Deng Xiaoping, proposed the Chinese modernization in the late 1970s, almost no one can imagine what it would look like 40 years later and how to realize it. And when Joseph Stiglitz, Nobel Prize winner of economics, predicted that urbanization in China would be one of the most influential global events shaping the 21st century, some Western observers ignored it. Today, China is the second largest economy, with roughly 18 trillion GDP in US dollars. It has eradicated absolute poverty and built a moderately prosperous society. In addition, China is striving to realize the second centenary goal of building a modern socialist country. The whole world waits with expectation. At the beginning ceremony of 20th National Congress of the CPC, Chinese President Xi Jinping laid out the roadmap and the timetable for building a strong and modern socialist country by the middle of this century. He emphasized that improving people's lives is the very basis of this endeavor, along with high-quality development. A modern society is characterized by advanced technology and a high degree of urbanization, which boost economic development. Although not a widely accepted conception in the Western world, Society building is critical for Chinese modernization, which includes improving people's livelihoods and maintaining social stability. Three features of Chinese modernization are closely related to society building: a super large population, common prosperity, and the progress of material, ideological culture. The last decade has seen China making remarkable achievements in society building, including poverty alleviation and COVID-19 containment. China has realized sustainable economic growth with a stable society, further boosting development. These two miracles are a strong response to Western political scholars such as Samuel Huntington, who argue that modernity means stability, while the modernization process creates turmoil. An interesting question is, how did the miracles come about? In Western democracies, a political party actually is a link between civil society and the state. It stands for and protects certain vested interests and groups, and mobilize resources to contest elections. Scholars usually use party as a part to describe such a phenomenon. In China, the situation is quite different. CPC's policies are deeply rooted in Chinese society and aimed at benefiting all the people. We call it party as a whole. The party plays a leading role in governance and avoiding partisan strife or interests, can implement long-term policies and strategies. In recent years, in particular, social policies have helped create more jobs, improved healthcare and housing conditions despite rapid urbanization. Let me give you an example. Like in the early 1990s, the social security system was specially established for SOEs to lay off workers and smooth the path of reform. After the dawn of the new century, the social security program was expanded to the whole population. Such policy innovations are not dominated by any interest group or a result of populism. In other words, the party is autonomous enough to make impartial and scientific decisions. How to balance the economy and the society has been a major concern for most governments since the Industrial Revolution. It is still the key concern of modern states. As for welfare states, they believe the movement of labor eases tensions between capital and the working class, but they have encountered many challenges, including rapidly aging societies which require huge investment to ensure the well-being of all the people. Therefore, such welfare is hardly sustainable in the long term. Developmental states such as Japan and the Republic of Korea, they took another path to develop. These countries with strong state tradition tried to balance growth and stability at the very beginning when their economies took off. However, the Asia financial crisis in the late 1990s saw the malfunctioning of social welfare systems in these countries. As a result, many adopted an inclusive welfare system as a remedy after the crisis. Chinese modernization is a unique combination of market facilitation and society building, and these efforts are endogenous for people's well-being and not capital-oriented. In the CPC's first century, and even in wartime, social welfare and the related policies were always being highlighted along with economic development. Since the Sixth Five-Year Plan in the early 1980s, the domestic economy and the social development have been projected simultaneously. the new economy-society relations differ from the Western style and offer new options for developing countries to build a modern society. Modern society faces many risks and uncertainties, which can be overcome only through joint efforts. And given the different perceptions of equity, justice, and order, society building cannot be measured using economic indicators. China's rapid development also faces some risks and challenges. That's why the party encourages all stakeholders to work together to address problems including improving healthcare, public safety, and community development. When China enters a new era, joint endeavors and common prosperity are encouraged to foster more society building. In fact, a shared community is critical to society building, and better collaboration leads to better performance in social sectors. When I was a kid, my parents told me, when each household in China has a lamp and a telephone, that is modernization. 30 years later, I have my kids, and we are in the new era of China. Modernization is not only about lamps or telephones, but also about high-speed rail, internet gems, space station, and modern governance system. A more harmonious society will definitely help develop China into a modern socialist country by 2050, which is the second centenary goal. In his plenary speech, President Xi Jinping urged everyone to work together to accelerate the society building process so that the second centenary goal is realized. To build a harmonious society, some basic principles need to be followed. To begin with, society as a whole should follow the party's leadership, and we should also note that high-quality development and the whole process people's democracy will not only help China realize the second centenary goal, but also provide economic and political support to fulfill the task. And we must always keep in mind that common prosperity is China's ultimate policy goal. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Hu, for sharing your insights on Chinese-style modernization with us. Our next guest is Saurabh Gupta, Senior Fellow at the Institute for China-America Studies, and here is a short video about him.
Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce myself first. My name is Saurabh Gupta. I'm a senior fellow at the Institute for China-America Studies in Washington, D.C. My area of focus is the U.S.-China relationship across many dimensions, with a particular focus on the economic, trade, and foreign policy dimension of U.S.-China relations. I want to thank the organizers, China Daily, for inviting me to speak. And the most important takeaway from me is that China remains doubly committed to its modernization and development-related process. And it is on this topic, on this theme, that I would like to present a few more ideas. In conclusion, what I would once again like to highlight is the importance of China's move from high-speed growth to high-quality development. The timelines of this move are very elegantly stated and well thought out. China does this very well, but it's important now to endow full effort to implement the goals. And I hope that these goals will be implemented just as rigorously over the next 30 years as the reform and opening up and the modernization process of China was conducted over the past 30. Because if China is successful in terms of its pivot to high-speed, high-quality development, I think by 2050, China will have no peer in the world. But more importantly, whether China has a peer or does not have a peer in the world, or at least the Indo-Pacific or the Asia-Pacific region will be peaceful, prosperous, and stable. That is the most important assurance. And I think the world, the region, and China has an interest in seeing China succeed. And I hope that will be the case. And we'll be looking forward and hoping for good news going forward. China has had a unique path to modernization, which is not new. That path to modernization was effectively laid out in the late 1970s, in the early 1980s. It was Mr. Deng Xiaoping who had laid out the 4 modernizations and the Chinese path to modernization. In fact, in 1981, he had laid out what was called the new principal contradiction at the time. And that principal contradiction at the time was that there are great material and cultural needs, but China's level of production was backward, and China needed to catch up in terms of its material capabilities. And that, in a way, kind of kick-started growth, the great era of reform and opening up and growth, which went on for 40 years and went on spectacularly. But by the time of the 19th Party Congress in October 2017, President Xi had decided that, yes, China had grown and it had grown well, but there were also creeping inequalities which were coming into the system, which could, at a later point of time, collapse growth if they were not adequately taken care of. And therefore, at the 2017 19th Congress of the Communist Party, a new principal contradiction was laid out and a new era of growth with Chinese characteristics was also produced. And what that new principal contradiction essentially said that people have aspirations for a higher standard of living, but are held back by unequal and unbalanced growth. When I hear the words Chinese path to modernization, that is the first thing that comes to me about how China has tried to uniquely set its own circumstances and is now moving from just pure growth to a more broader welfarist orientation, which is fundamentally going to be led by growth and economic expansion, but which will become more egalitarian, and which will also become more green and sustainable. And so from my perspective, the 20th Party Congress doubled down and reinforced on this orientation of high quality development, because from the time that it had inaugurated a new era of growth with Chinese characteristics in October 2017, the US listing China as a great power competitor, there's been a trade war, there's been a technology war, there's been COVID-19 and the breakdown in relations with the West to some degree. And yet China has still maintained its consistency of focus on growth and on better development, higher quality growth and development. And I think that's very creditable. And the longer China can stay focused on higher quality growth, more egalitarian growth, bringing the larger parts of society within more sustainable growth, I think China can become a first-class advanced nation. That will take time still, but I think China has succeeded, even though the next 30 years will be very difficult, both geopolitically and even pursuing high quality development also. China has been an absolute phenomenon over the last 40 years. China has pulled out more people from poverty more quickly than at any time in human history. I mean, China's development has been just remarkable. So one talks of not just the rise of China, but the rise of Asia, because China's development and rise has been tied to the rise of Asia, and China has interlocked itself within regional value chains, and is very tightly wound, both from trade and investment perspective, with markets both in Asia and in the Western world. And so I think it has been a boon to everybody and even to consumers in the Western world. And now, as we see China moving to its next stage of development, we are seeing a phase where China is taking a lot of its development genius to much of the developing world, the global south, in terms of a lot of infrastructure, in terms of a lot of financing, in terms of a lot of managerial skills. And I think in many respects, this has been a win-win for China and the world. China has been this great boom for modernization at home and abroad. China is now moving from high-speed growth to high-quality development, which includes growth plus equity plus sustainable capabilities. And I think down the line by 2040, 2050, when China is not just the biggest economy in the world, but is the biggest consumption economy in the world, the biggest consumer in the world, China will become the ballast of international economic stability. Thank you again for your attention.
Mr. Gupta's speech deeply reviewed China's modernization development path and analyzed this development model together with the development paths of other countries, which is very enlightening. Thank you. Our final speaker is Ian Goodrum. He has been a writer and editor at China Daily in Beijing for over 5 years. Prior to arriving in China, he worked at various newspapers in the United States as an editor, columnist, and reporter. Let's watch a short video about it by him.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Ian Goodrum, a writer and editor with China Daily. I was able to attend the opening ceremony of the 20th CPC National Congress and be there in person as the political report was read. Tonight, I'd like to share some of my thoughts on the report, its contents, and what it means for China's future. By now, we are all very familiar with China's centenary goals, the major bullet points of the country's agenda for 2021 and 2049. The first of these, coinciding with the 100th anniversary of the founding of the Communist Party of China, saw the conclusion of the long process of building what the party calls a moderately prosperous society. I bring this up because the concept of a moderately prosperous society has existed for a very long time, well before it was associated with the CPC's 100th birthday. It has been a fixture in the rhetoric of modern Chinese leaders since at least the time of Deng Xiaoping, and in the past was criticized for not being specific or grounded enough to serve as the foundation for real change. But as the centenary drew nearer, it did become more concrete and was defined in terms that were material and testable, the doubling of GDP and disposable income from 2010 levels, the eradication of extreme poverty, a long-term project for China and the CPC, was eventually wedded to this metric as well. So it was during this year's Congress that the targets for the second centenary goal became clearer, as well as the near midpoint between now and 2049, when, it is said, China's drive to modernization will have been basically completed. As was the case with the moderately prosperous society run-up, criticisms abounded over a lack of specificity. What those critics overlooked, or chose not to acknowledge, was this is part of the political process in China. In the beginning, these policy prescriptions begin conceptually, more abstract the farther away their expected date of fruition. More immediate ambitions carry with them a set of precise objectives, and as these are reached, the more long-term ideas are fleshed out in the same way their antecedents were. This practice creates continuity across years and decades, ensuring the country stays on level track. With the gradual inclusion of benchmarks, it also functions as a motivator for local governments and an accountability mechanism for the system as a whole. When these targets are laid plain, there is no question what has to be done to fulfill them. This enhances the people's link to their political leadership through heightened expectations. If disposable income, for instance, has been promised to double by a certain year, there's little doubt the people who would stand to benefit from such a change are anticipating it greatly. Which brings us to this year's Congress. We now have a list of priorities the country will be focusing on between now and 2035, when the modernization drive will have finished. A per capita GDP of a mid-level developed country, better and more equitably distributed public services, a far higher share of middle-income earners as a proportion of the population, and a greatly enhanced capacity for innovation and scientific discovery, to name a few. These will serve as the rubric for government performance in the coming years and define the country's progress in a tangible way. Laying out these standards is exactly what critics claim to want, but now, as before, this inconvenient fact will almost certainly be disregarded. It's unfortunate, but that's just the way it is. China can and should remain concentrated on its own affairs and let its own development do the talking. And there is plenty of talking to do on that front. But talk is cheap. If there's one thing I hope you take away from today's addresses, it's that for all our discussion of concepts, theories, and policies, ultimately these guide changes that have approached real, living people. We must never lose sight of the fact this is all being done and must continue to be done to ensure the lives of China's people remain on a continuous track of improvement, that the next generations have something to look forward to. Despite spending 5 years here, I have only seen a sliver of the country. But even that small amount has revealed a society that, yes, faces great challenges and obstacles on a near daily basis, yet has come a long way despite those arduous struggles. The problems of today are not the problems of 5 or 10 years ago, much less 40 or 70. And while it is a near certainty the future will bring with it new and even more complex questions, we can say with some confidence those questions will be answered, because that's precisely what past and present experience tell us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gudrum. Thank you for sharing your understanding of the development of the Communist Party of China based on your own experiences in the United States and China. The new journey is an expedition full of glory and dreams. Under the leadership of the Communist Party of China, Chinese people are striving for the grand goal of building a modern socialist country. And let's build a better world together. Well, that's all for this edition of Vision China. We thank all of our speakers for the perspectives, insights, and expertise. For the latest updates, visit www.chinadaily.com.cn, download the China Daily app, or follow China Daily on WeChat, Weibo, Facebook, or Twitter. Stay tuned for upcoming Vision China events, where we will be discussing key issues facing China and the world. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.